Why Florida State's football program should be considered one of the top 6 in the nation.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you to the everydayers that make this a great show. Truly appreciate you all coming in and checking it out. Please like and subscribe and comment on this podcast. And whatever you do, I'd really appreciate it if you have the opportunity to hit that notification bell. Want to make sure you get this podcast as often as you can. We're found wherever you get your pods for free and on YouTube, part of the awesome Locked On Network, your team every single day. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, here's the theme of today. It's a big, broad overview, looking at all the spring games, recruiting, coaching staffs, all the things that lead into it. I wanted to kind of take a synopsis now that Florida State spring's over, and all the spring games are over for that matter. Who are the best programs for at least the next 2 years? Because of the portal, I really don't feel like it's a good idea to go beyond 2 seasons. So I'm going to announce the schools that I think are top 6 in the nation. Some of those that could be knocking on the door, and a couple, quite honestly, because of coaching changes, I just don't know. I'm going to break it down based on a few categories. Number one, it's your quarterback room. We talk about this over and over again. If you do not have quarterback play, you're toast. Another thing that I really look at heavily, defensive line recruiting. It's another topic that I bring up here on Locked On Seminoles a lot. And then finally, just kind of like the trust in the program. Are they recruiting to their scheme? Do they have coaches that I truly trust to build year after year? And they're not just relying on the portal. We're going to dive in on that with Florida State first right now. So this is a topic that some fans like to throw out. Florida State only uses the portal, blah, blah, blah. That's not true. Florida State has done the best job. Now, it's a slight difference, but a big impact. Florida State does the best job of utilizing the portal, and to date, they've had to. They had to. When they got on campus, the current staff, which most of it's still intact, by the way, this is a group that Norvell had to slowly build, get as many good high school players as he could, sure, junior college kid, whatever, but he had to hit the portal, especially O-line. We all know it if you follow Florida State, and that's fine. So that's why I think it's interesting that they're the one school that has just killed it with the portal. Their ability to evaluate, et cetera, has been second to none. They are a complete anomaly with how they've done it at key spots all over the place, from quarterback to safety. They've had kids at some point in time that have played as a transfer. Devontae Brown's played corner his whole career, played at UCF in Miami. Now he's at Florida State. He's competing at safety. He's one of the guys that's going to get PT this year. They figure it out. Good for them. Exception to the rule, but you have to give them credit for it. And now the recruiting is stepping up. So we'll talk more about the Noles, but that's kind of an overview of how I'm going to do it with several teams. But first, before I dive into Florida State, which, hint here, this is a little bit of a break, I don't think there's any doubt that Florida State's one of the top 6 programs in the country over the next 2 years. I know that's a little bit, not surprising to Florida State fans. I've kind of led into that based on my spring game comments the last couple pods, but I think they are, and I'll go into more detail about them. First, though, before I go into the 6, it's also really important to say who's not there. This might be the bigger surprise. This isn't going to be the shocker or the spoiler or anything like that on a couple of them. They lost players, etc. But a lot of fan bases just can't see anything besides linear. They just can't do it. In my opinion, this is an example. Ohio State has the worst fan base in college football. They just can't imagine not winning every game by 100 points. The worst fan base in college football by a mile. Can't stand it. I don't have anything personal against it. It's just like every time I meet Ohio State fans, they are not realistic. This year, they're going to be really good again, etc. So we'll talk about them. But like some of these other fan bases that are similar to Ohio State in terms of expectations, you're probably not going to like what I have to say next. Let's start with the team up north. Michigan, I don't think they're going to be a great program the next couple of years. Quarterback room is really thin. I really like Sherrod Moore as a coach. I like the way he talks. I like the way he really just kind of carried on with Harbaugh and all the things they wanted to do. But they have too many question marks at quarterback. We don't know how Moore's going to handle big game situations. Never been a major head coach. I don't see how they can stay up there and they lost their entire defensive staff. There's no realistic way to say, long-term, this is a good program. And I'm curious, I don't know, but I'm curious how they're going to do after a lot of the hardball key players that were juniors and seniors last year are all gone. COVID year and all that. Come 26, we'll know what kind of coach Moore is. They're a bit of a question mark, if you will. Also, another one, same deal, Kalen DeBoer. He's now at Alabama. He did great things at Washington. That's the good news. But that is up in the Pacific Northwest. Culturally, Alabama and the greater Seattle area have about as much in common as I do and Shaq when it comes to height. I'm 5'10", and Shaq's over 7 feet. They have nothing. Recruiting is all about culture and relationships, especially down here in the South, Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. I have a lot of questions on how well that's going to work long-term. He's going to get a very short leash, very short, 2 years tops, with how Alabama fans react to him winning and losing. It's going to be feast or famine. No idea what's going to happen there. He needs a quarterback to step up. They need to do different things. I don't know if it's going to work. I know they don't have as much defensive talent as they used to because of the portal. A lot of guys left when Nick Saban decided to step down. I don't think that's a top 6 program consistently over the next couple of years. They might have some runs, meaning like they win 4 or 5 games in a row, but I also think they'll have some clunkers. More importantly, I'm very, very concerned about their recruiting. Again, culturally, that's an awful fit. West Coast people do not recruit well in Dixie as a general rule. They just don't. Lane Kiffin's the only one I can think of, and he's one of the best recruiters I've seen being able to adjust. He's coached in Florida, he's coached in Alabama and Mississippi, etc. He's done it, but not many guys have. That's the exception, again, to the rule. So I really don't like where Alabama's at. I don't care what other people think. I know it's the Alabama brand. I'm not buying it. You got to prove me wrong. But again, it's first year, so maybe he will. It'd be a great story if he could be one of those rare guys, but you got to prove me wrong there. Penn State, this is a school that I don't understand how this happens over and over. I've said it on the Penn State podcast till I'm blue in the face. Zach Sako is a great guy, but they can't coach offense. I watched their spring game and about upchucked. It was the same garbage. Short pass, get rid of it quick, not enough downfield throws. When they had a downfield throw, they couldn't connect. They just lost their best receiver. There's no reason for me to believe they're in a good spot to improve. Now, they're a good program. Their defense is nasty. It's really good. But you got to score. I have zero faith, zero, in anything really with Penn State in the passing game when other teams know you got to throw. They're going to win 8 to 10 games every year. Until they prove they can throw it when they want to throw it, Penn State will not get over the hump and be a team in the top 6. They're close. They're right on that fringe, but I just don't see it. LSU, this is one that shouldn't be this way, and I don't understand why. I watched the spring game, a gasp. Their secondary is the worst in major college football. Dead last. And when I say major, it's several of the schools I'm mentioning here. There are about 18 schools or so that can win a national title just based on tradition, recruiting, the money they have for facilities and all that. LSU's right towards the top. If you go and watch LSU's spring game, that was a joke. Now, the quarterback play and the receiver, like Kyron Lacey and stuff, they got some guys. Offensively, no problem. They'll be really good. Both offensive tackles, NFL players. A little shaky at running back, but they'll figure it out, and they're so good at quarterback, they'll be okay. Some solid tight ends, they'll be fine. That secondary is a sieve. Horrendous. Guys running free, guys running so open when they score, DBs turn around and looking at each other with their arms up, pointing at it. Never a good sign. And this isn't the end of spring. That should never happen at LSU. Ever, ever, ever. That is considered DBU by a lot of people. And they can't cover anybody. What are you doing in Baton Rouge? That's pathetic. They are not a top 6 team. They'll win 8 or 9 games just because they can outscore a lot of people. But in the SEC especially, if you can't play big-time defense in key moments, you're not going to be consistently on the winner's circle. LSU's a click down for me. The school that ironically, this is really weird, that might pass them at least for this year, we'll see if it's beyond because they do rely too heavily on the portal. They might be a one-hit wonder, and we've had a couple of these recently like TCU. That would be Ole Miss. They went all in on NIL and just bought themselves a bunch of transfers. Let's just call it what it is. And then also got some really good players on offense that can even help more. They got defensive linemen that they needed, pass rusher from Florida, defensive tackle from A&M. They got different guys all over the place. Kiffin's terrible in big games, though. He's like 1-20 against top 5 teams. He's never been good at it. He has to still prove that, but they've got the talent. There's just no pedigree to say what's going to happen with Ole Miss with this kind of talent. There's no barometer. They're never in this spot. I still will go against it until they prove it, but they got a roster to be top 6 at least in 24. I don't know about 25, so I'm going to keep them out of my top 6 overall, but they're a team that could crash the party possibly depending how this goes. They're certainly really good spot at quarterback, like really good receiver, etc. Their offense is going to be tremendous. I still need to see it on defense and on game day in big, big moments. Miami, the team that everybody here probably likes to hate the most, I need to see the same things that I was talking about with Penn State. Game day decisions, the ability to make big plays in the passing game, not screwing up with a key fumble, just not shooting yourself in the foot. It's a little broader than Penn State. With Penn State, it's just the passing game's so bad, it's embarrassing. But with Florida State and Miami and Florida, some of these schools, they should never have problems with passing game. And Miami doesn't either. They can throw it around. Now they can't shoot themselves in the foot. It could be a penalty. They get too many, way too many. They have too many moments where they just give up a gaff play. Like, what was that? And then, of course, Mario with his stupidity on the not kneeling last year against Georgia Tech. Cost him a game. There's not enough there for me to trust yet, but they could be a 10-win team, and you could argue they have the most talent of anybody in the ACC this year. It's debatable, but the history with Mario, and they just shot themselves in the foot too much the last 2 years. I don't know what to think. I don't want to project them beyond this year, too, because Cam Ward's a single-year player. He'll be really good this year. Don't get me wrong. They'll win more games than they did in the last couple of years. They might even win 10. I don't know. But I need to see it. I don't trust it until it's proven. So Miami's not in my top 6. Florida, I just want to bring them up because it's a school Florida State's a rival with. I'm just going to cut to the chase. I expect them to be a little bit better than what I originally did after seeing the spring. DJ Lagway's really good. But at the same time, they got too many holes on defense in terms of making errors, and I don't think they've got quite enough depth to get to where they need to go. And then they play their ridiculous schedule this year. I think Billy Napier is going to get fired. Prove me wrong. Clemson, I'm just going to say the same thing I always say about them. Until you openly, willingly, and consistently embrace the transfer portal, Clemson shall not sniff another national title. That is it. If you don't like that, that's fine. I really don't care, but it's just the way it is, because to be really honest with you, there's no excuse for Clemson not to. They got a lot of advantages location-wise. It's a good school, a great culture, good staff. You got to use the portal, man. It can't be a one-direction kind of deal. That's as simple as it gets. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the top 6 teams that I think, why, and we're going to get into that here in just a moment on Locked On Seminoles. All right. I'm sure you've probably heard me talk about the Gametime app. If you haven't downloaded it, you should. It's an opportunity for you to get tickets at the last moment for anything you can imagine. The other good thing about it, and this, I'm a baseball guy anyway, so you can take this however you want. You can get killer deals, all of the different kinds of prices, cheaper than ever before. Get views from your seats, lowest price guarantee, because right now MLB has teamed up with Gametime to do a deal with them. So you don't have to go very far to get this stuff. My favorite thing about Gametime is the same thing I've said on this several times. You can click on the app in a couple different sentences, type in, Atlanta Braves, New York Yankees, whatever it is you want to do. You can get a game, click on it, and then you pick your seat, and you can see your vantage point from where you would actually be sitting in that venue straight to home plate. Not many ways you can do that other than using a great technology. Got to give a little bit of a tap of the cap with the Gametime app, because they've done a great job of finding a way to do this. Technology is not as easy as it makes it seem. So give them some credit. And also, you have zone deals, you got priority seating, and the pricing goes down as you get closer to games like the MLB prices. That's huge. Check it out. Have some fun with it. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Also, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA, NHL, and baseball's in full swing. FanDuel is your place to bet on each game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So who are the 6 teams that I think are going to be the best for at least 24 and 25? Again, to reiterate, because of the transfer portal, I don't think anybody should project more than 2 years on like program status. In a moment's notice, you can lose an elite player and be in bad shape. It's just reality. There is no team, Georgia included, that is not in a potential bad spot in one day. So here are the 6 teams, and I don't really have an order here. You can order it however you want. I think it's pretty safe to say Georgia has the best overall program. I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to argue that. I guess I can just start with them. But here are the concerns I have and why I like them too. I'm going to give good and bad on why I think these teams are going to be top programs over the next couple of years. Take it for whatever it's worth. But I start with quarterback and D-line. Those are the 2 I focused on. And then some areas I think they need to improve. With Georgia, they've got a great quarterback. I just watched their spring game. That is a fantastic football team. They got a lot more weapons than they usually do. They can throw for 350 if they want. Georgia doesn't normally do that. Their running back room is still good, may not be quite as good as normal. And yeah, I know they lost Brock Bowers, but they have so much speed at receiver. They have so many guys that can catch the ball out of the backfield. They got Lawson Lucky at tight end, another really good football player that I think will play in the NFL. They're going to outscore teams. And as they always do, their D-line recruiting is really good. If you do not know the name Michael Williams, you will. He's been playing pretty good the last couple of years. He's going to be one of the best defensive linemen in college football. That's a problem. Their O-line recruiting is just completely off the charts. They're going to beat people up when they can. I think that their quarterback, whoever it is, over the next 2-3 years, for the most part, won't have to play in the fourth quarter. They should be the best team each year if they don't have key injuries or some kind of weird transfer. Again, that can happen. But this is the team that everybody's gunning for. It's Georgia. They are the best program in college football. I don't really think it's all that debatable. The second team I'm just going to bring up is Florida State because this is a Florida State podcast. I want to talk about them. I've been really impressed with how well they've developed, position across the board, but quarterback is now really interesting to me and how it develops between now and the end of this next season. We all know DJU is going to be the guy behind center for the Noles. No debate. They need to find a way, and I don't know how you do this. Every team goes through this every couple of years. You know who the main guy is, but he's done after that season. How do you get some valuable, not just throw-in games, valuable experience for Brock Glenn and or Luke Krimhall? Because in 2025, either you're going to take a transfer portal guy or one of those 2 guys is going to be your starter. Highly doubt that Tramel Jones is going to come in as a true freshman and beat out the other 2 guys, although I guess technically it's possible. They got some good young talent. They got to figure out quarterback. The other thing is they need to continue to improve O-line recruiting out of the high school ranks. They're trending in that way. And I like the D-line recruiting. It's getting better too. They're on the cusp. They both positions need like one more guy. Like they need to actually sign Solomon Thomas. He's the stud committed to the Noles out of Jacksonville. He's a really good football player. That's the way you win. You get the guys that you want. They don't get them. You develop them. They play for you till they go to the NFL. Sounds simple, and I know it's not. Florida State hadn't done that for a while. They're starting to trend in that direction with a number of guys on the O-line. That's the way to do it. Need to get away from the portal. The third team I want to talk about is Ohio State. Their quarterback room is loaded, but who's going to be the guy after this year? And I don't think it's loaded in terms of an elite guy yet. The guy they brought in from Kansas State, well, he's a good player, but I think he's a bit overrated. I don't think he's accurate enough. And I think eventually that's going to be Ohio State's downfall at some point this year. I think they'll lose at least one game because of the quarterback position, but their depth is ridiculous, and it's a very unique situation. I have no idea who's going to win the job. I was going through it. Devin Brown had moments in their spring game, but so did the true freshman, Julian Sayin. He's the kid that originally signed with Alabama. Those are great programs to kind of like talk about quarterback like Alabama, Ohio State, and all these different schools, but you still got to have a dude. I don't think they have one this year. And would Sayin be good enough to make that jump as a sophomore? That's a lot to ask in Ryan Day's offense. There's a lot of complexities to it. We'll see. But they also have to have a guy step up or it's not going to matter. The other thing with them is sometimes it works out this way. They have a really talented defensive line depth chart this year. They're going to get gutted after this season by the NFL draft and guys running out of eligibility. They're going to lose at least 4 or 5 guys. How do they develop the younger guys? kind of like quarterback at Florida State. Can they get enough of those players reps so when they transfer or when they move up next year on the depth chart, they don't have to just go portal heavy and really rely on it? They got some talent, but experience matters there too. Ohio State will be a top 6 program, but if they want to win a natty anytime soon, quarterback's got to get better. They need to answer questions along the defensive line. Oregon, this is a unique situation too. I think that they've got good quarterback play. They got a 6-year senior this year. They'll be in the hunt for the national title. This is such a weird number. The 2023 recruiting class for Oregon had, and I'm not kidding, had 10 defensive linemen. I'll say that again, 10 defensive linemen. So there's no problem there. They have done a really good job as a program of uploading a lot of players, but they're going to lose pretty much everybody at D tackle after this year, and they're too deep. All those young guys that are now sophomores kind of pushing for a second spot. In 25, they have to be that program. And they've got quarterback. Dante Moore, I thought he was the best player in the country coming out of high school, out of Detroit, Martin Luther King a couple of years ago, went to UCLA, now transferred to Oregon. He should take over. They should be good there. The only question with them, and it's a little bit different than the other answers I've given, is actually a receiver. They got some good guys that are seniors, and they got a stud as a main guy, but they need to have some of those younger guys again get a chance. Dickey and some other players that they have, plenty of talent. How well they rotate in and how much they develop a rapport with Dante Moore for the next season is really key. They've got other guys too. Don't get me wrong. Running back's good there, etc. They've recruited in the trenches well, but I need to see the running back room and those guys be able to work with receivers that cause the other team to have fear so they can't just bring everybody down in the box. That's what I'm saying. But defensively, Oregon is trending towards an SEC type program. Texas. Do you trust the mullet? There's questions about that. Quinn Ewers, guy I saw in high school, has got a big arm. He can really throw it. He has the ability to get the ball down the field. He can hit plays on the run, but he's not a guy that stays healthy. So I'm a little worried about this season, but I would rank them number 2 right now behind Georgia for this season. If he's not the guy, Arch Manning just threw for 350 in the spring game. That does give me some questions about their secondary, which I'll bring up in a second, but they're good at quarterback. Now the question is, do they have the weapons beyond this year to do it? I think so. To be on a 2-3 year run, they should. But to transfer portal is something they got to worry about. They've got a lot of speed at receiver, though. They can really, really run. They brought in Nye Black from Alabama, another kid. He's like a flex tight end. They should be great this year on offense. Defensively, they got some size. I don't think they're going to, replace the 2 behemoths they had at defensive tackle this past year. They're good, but I don't know if they're going to be quite that good. That's the one thing. Like, they had arguably the top 2 defensive tackles in run gap fits and kind of how they played within the system. They lost their D-line coach to LSU. Bo went all over to his home in Baton Rouge, but I still think they're going to be good up front there as well, and they've recruited it really well. Linebacker recruiting's been excellent. The only concern really that I see beyond a few guys needing to kind of step up at receiver, I don't understand how this is possible at Texas. Kind of like at LSU, they sucked at pass defense last year. They were terrible. They're 116th by the stats that I got. How is that possible at Texas? If they have those kind of problems, big games, they'll get bounced. They'll lose. It's why they lost to Washington last year. That has to get fixed. And again, they lost Bo Davis, their D-line coach, one of the best in the business. He went back to Louisiana to coach it for the Tigers. So that's a really interesting trend. They got to figure that out, but that is a loaded roster. Watch out for C.J. Baxter at running back. Finally, Notre Dame, this is a unique program. They might have the deepest quarterback room in the country. If it's not Ohio State, watch out for C.J. Carr. He's a true freshman. I think he's going to end up being the backup at some point later this year or in the next spring. He's the next elite player there, and they finally kind of figured it out on defense across the board. They're loaded in the secondary. They got 3 guys back there. They're going to be NFL players. This program is going to be legit moving forward. Very consistent recruiting, very balanced. D-line, O-line's pretty good, although they do need to figure out offensive tackle. That's their biggest question mark going into this season. They got some good players, but I don't know if they can handle a Texas or a Florida State or somebody in a playoff environment. I don't know, but everything else is pretty good. Offensive tackle, it's ironic because they just had 2 guys turn pro for the draft, which is one of the reasons they're short. They got a couple of young guys. They need to figure it out, and if they don't, they might miss their window this year, but loaded at running back, loaded at receiver because of the transfer portal. It's weird. They kind of went the Florida State route, took 3 transfer portal guys, in addition to a couple key high school recruits. They should be good. I think that Notre Dame will be a playoff team pretty much the next couple of years if they figure out tackle. If they don't, though, they could be 9-3. Just like a lot of teams on this list, there's a hole somewhere you got to fix. And if you don't, it won't end very well. Coming up next here on Locked On Seminoles, my last thoughts about Florida State in the 2024 season. If you've ever played Monopoly like I have as a kid, you probably have a lot of fond memories of it. And right now you have a chance to do something similar on your phone. It's called Monopoly Go. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist to Monopoly where you can play not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part, messing with your friends. You can charge them rent on iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly you played as a kid. But now you can also heist their vaults for riches for yourself, and the leaderboards show what's going on with the biggest Monopoly tycoons. It's not just one way to do it. You can do it a million different ways. It's up to you. You can play it 100 different ways. So get in the game, join your friends, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store on Google Play. So Florida State overall as a program, I think, is in a pretty good spot. Quarterback's better than what I thought it was going into spring. They're showing they can develop guys because I've talked about the last two pods I did before this one, talked about DJU after the spring game, kind of how the room is. And I still agree with the following. They still need to figure out whether they need to take a transfer portal guy for 2025. They're not going to know that for a while. Plenty of time to evaluate it. How well does Brock do in practice? We're going to have to kind of just go with what Norvell says, because assuming DJ stays healthy, he's not going to play much. Quarterback is the most important position, and it's also the hidden position, meaning he's standing there on the sidelines, but does he play meaningful reps? I don't care what they do against lesser programs. I care what Florida State does or does not do when they play elite teams. Defenses against Notre Dame, Miami, and Clemson. Do you start those games? And we all know, barring injury, he's not. So they're going to go into 25 a little bit iffy, but that's okay. It's part of college football. Sometimes you got to roll the dice. Or maybe they at least take a guy that can compete. I don't know what's going to happen there. That's a big question. Need to continue the O-line, D-line recruiting. But as long as Florida State continues on this path, they're going to be at least in contention. Barring major injuries, which do happen, Florida State should make the playoff, I'd say 2 out of 3 years with Norvell entrenched. You can make the following statement, and this is my last point on whether or not Florida State is a top 6 program and why I think they are. The coaching staff seems to be entrenched. They're happy to be there. They like coaching at Florida State. And when you've got continuity with your staff, think back to the Tom Osborne staff, 70s, 80s, and 90s in Nebraska. Anytime you got an elite player at a key position, they were just dominant. That's the way it should be at Florida State, too. It's the same kind of deal. When Bowden got a really good quarterback, they were dominant. Tommy Frazier was at Nebraska. You guys like Winky at Florida State, fit your system, coach them up. It'll take care of itself. So as long as the staff stays together, I think Florida State's going to be a program that's going to get in the mix for a national championship run sometime in the next few years. It could be as early as 2025. We'll find out soon enough. With that, please like and subscribe to this podcast and make sure that you comment on this. If you think there's somebody else I should have brought up, that's fine. I didn't hit on every school that didn't make the list, or maybe you think one of them will be a lot better than I said they would be. That's fine. I'm just going with what I've seen from watching spring games and following recruiting as close as I do, including the Noles, who, once again, I think conservatively are a top 6 program. It's going to be a lot of fun to follow it, though. With that, everybody have a great day. Thank you very much.